Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in to 98.3 FM, The Life. You're listening to Bacon Bits with Master Happiness. And of course, I'm your host, Marty Jalove. I come at you every Monday night about this time to talk about your job, your career, your vision made clear, the skills that you hone for the business that you own, the ups and downs, the smiles and frowns, where you're at and where you're bound. If you miss any of today's episode, and this is kind of a special episode, kind of a pre-recorded episode, so it's going to be live on Spotify, Amazon Music, any place, pretty much any place you listen to podcasts. Just look up Bacon Bits with Master Happiness. And so, I'm always on a quest to bring you some great industry guests. And this is fantastic. A very good friend of mine, recently friends, only a couple of years now we've been friends, Gina, but I feel like I've known you forever.
Yes.
Okay. So this is Gina Melendez, and I will have her introduce herself a little bit and kind of tell you where you can find her on LinkedIn, etc. But what I wanted to do is kind of just tell you about the show. This is part 3 of a 6-part series, and I'm trying to really get some great industry leaders to talk about building a dream team. So we had the first one with my friend Joe Janicki, and we talked about hiring. The second one was about onboarding with Leslie Day, and today is about communication. And what's great is I do a lot of work with Gina here and there, and we sometimes are on Teams, we're on Zoom, we're on the phone, all kinds of stuff, and rarely, it seems, in person. So we have learned to communicate in the best ways possible. So Gina, I wanted to introduce yourself to the world or whoever's listening.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So my name is Gina Melendez. I'm the president and CEO of Hudson Lock. I'm an engineer by trade, and now I'm working in operations. So super excited to be here tonight.
Cool. And they can find you on LinkedIn under Hudson Lock or Gina Melendez.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Perfect. I always ask people if they like being followed on Instagram or Facebook, and some people are like, no, that's for my friends. Okay?
Yeah.
We can find you on LinkedIn if they had any questions for you. If they wanted to learn more about you, you're on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so Gina, today again is about communication. And I don't know how familiar you are really with the show. I always ask people and they go, oh, I'm an avid listener. And they don't really even know the name of the show. But that's okay. So I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire.
Thank you.
Great. The name of the show is Bacon Bits with Master Happiness. My company is Master Happiness. And the reason for Bacon Bits is I really think that everything bacon touches becomes just a little bit better. Okay. So I love applying bacon or the bacon philosophy to everything. So, of course, today we're not talking about the bacon for chewing. We're talking about the bacon for doing. All right. And so I use this acronym BACON to kind of break down and create a loose outline for what we're going to talk about. And like I said, it's just a loose outline. I'm going to try to keep us on track. But if we go off on a tangent and the tangent seems more interesting, that's where we'll stay. All right. Are you in for the ride?
Yes.
All right. All right. So today's bacon on how to master team communication. First is going to be B, and that's going to be transparent. And you're also going to notice how I kind of cheat with the letters, be transparent, because there's no T in bacon. All right. A is going to be ask questions. We want to ask a lot of questions. C is create safety. I think this is really important. I think so often we overlook this one. Mm-hmm. O is going to be open feedback, and that's got to be a two-way street. And then N is going to be notify always. All right. This whole idea that everything is evolving and changing and going on a regular basis. All right. So we have to continue to make sure that our team knows everything by keeping that type of open communication. So before we go into this, before we get into the bacon, Gina, tell me a little bit about your past. And I always talk about past jobs. I never want to talk about current jobs because you never know who's listening. Yeah. But past jobs. Have you ever had any great communicators, whether they be subordinates, peers, leaders, etc., really great communicators or poor communicators? Do you have any stories, anything you want to share?
I've had my experience with both. So,
okay. Anything you could share?
Sure. I think the great communicators were the ones that mixed some formal communication that was set at a certain cadence with informal. So,
okay.
If we had a daily stand-up meeting at 8:00 in the morning, that was always happening. But then there were a couple check-ins in the afternoon that didn't necessarily happen at the same time, but it would evolve depending on what the day brought. So that was really great. And then I had some not so great communicators where, they wouldn't really talk about anything of the business, and then would just focus on like external activities in their life. Right.
Sure.
So we would never we would never talk about the business. So it was a very
Wow.
yeah, no. I actually one story to share, and maybe it's too early to jump into this. I remember having, I was new in career, new within less than a year with a certain job, and I was really conflicted because the person that was supposed to be the leader of the group wasn't providing guidance or communicating the direction we needed to go in, and I was actually told to lower my standards on
Wow.
so it really hit me really hard very early in my career of, what are the appropriate standards of being a leader. So I think that really stuck with me for a really long time. And I wanted to be, that person that would be able to provide, guidance both in a very structured and a very informal way.
Right. Well, I'm a little older than you, and so you don't have to laugh so quick.
Sorry.
Sorry. But I remember having a job, and I was in high school, and this was the point in time where the job review happened once a year. That's how little the communication was. I mean, I would get told, do this, but never really being told, are you succeeding at this? Are you doing a good job? This is where you should improve. This is where you're excelling, anything like that. And it was such a terrible model for businesses because that yearly review came up, and me as an employee, I was thinking, oh, this is cool. This is where I get the raise, right? And I remember a boss of mine going out of town on vacation, and it was like a couple weeks before my yearly review. And I just really did some crazy things, busted my ass, cleaned out this big storage room, rearranged stuff. And I just remember this dust just getting in my eyes and in my throat and everything. But I was so proud of myself, right? And he comes back, and I show him, what do you think of this? And he looks around and he goes, too little, too late. Just like that. And here I am thinking, I'm going to get a raise, right? And here he is like, no, you're this close to being fired, right?
Oh, wow.
And you think about that why take an entire year to tell me that? It's granted, as busy as we think we are, we have to make time to communicate with our employees. How can we ever hope to achieve goals if we're not constantly communicating? Right? All right. So I want to ask you another question. Now, currently, as president, you probably are in meeting after meeting after meeting, right? So about what percentage of your day would you say you are in some type of a meeting with someone communicating something as opposed to, I don't know, whatever else the presidents do?
I feel like it's probably 50 to 75% of my day is in some sort of meeting.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's a big chunk. I was wondering if it was going to even be more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I notice, and I think you're going to agree with me, the higher up the chain you go at the presidential level, you should be in the absolute most meetings. You go down a little bit, there should be a few less meetings, et cetera, because if everyone was in that many meetings all the time, you don't have enough time to get anything done.
Right.
Okay. And I think what's important is even at your level, the more time you take away from communication and you start putting your hands in something, the less opportunity the rest of the business has to get things done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I would.
All right. Excellent. So let's get into this a little bit, and let's see where this goes with us. So this first thing about being transparent. Now, before I say, yeah, you have to be 100% transparent, we know we can't be 100% transparent. We can be transparent to a point about everything that is directly connected to that employee, that department, et cetera. Okay. Do you have any stories or any secrets how you make that differentiation of what you talk about with what people?
Yeah. So some of the things that I try to do is think about what is the process that we're currently doing, right? I try to think back to who is, responsible for, the process, who just needs to know about it. So I try to break down an understanding of what everybody's role is in the process to then figure out how best and what to communicate, right? Making sure that communication is intentional, it's providing clarity, for whatever it is that that we need to go over. Is it bad news? Is it good news? If there's something that I know about the person that I should be mindful of when talking about the topic, is it something new to the parties? Is it an opportunity that we discuss? Is it something that we should have handled differently? So I try to think about all those different angles and what type of message I'm trying to deliver.
Okay. All right. So I like everything you're going with that, and I know many of the employees you work with, and I'm picturing this whole type of thing of how you manage that. Now, let me ask you this: is because there's at least 3 levels in your company, right? Mm-hmm. And so, how do you teach your management team to follow through with the same type of way that you want to communicate?
Okay. Yeah. So some of the things that I try to do is I'll try to talk to them privately about some feedback, right? I'm a big advocate about a quick stand-up meeting, right? I'm an advocate of working sessions, right? Or having something be open-ended. So depending on the circumstance, I may speak to that manager and say, hey, do you want me to take the lead on this one? Do you want to, watch, for lack of a better word, lead in action? Do you feel comfortable with it? Are you not comfortable with it? And then depending on their response, either I go and do the meeting or do the activity and then obviously engage with them throughout it, right? In the team that they're working on, and then we debrief after. And then we kind of make like a bulleted list of, okay, so you saw, we went over this. Did you see how I had open-ended questions? Did you see how I didn't go into the conversation with an assumption? Even though there were certain things, like you can get to that topic or talk about it. So we debrief about it and then, kind of, okay, now you take the next one. And then we debrief again.
Right. Yeah. So I like this because I like the fact that you want to take part in it. Like, let me be part of the meeting. Let me either take it, watch it, sit there, etc. I really like that because that's the only way you know for sure that they're being transparent on the things they need to be, and they're not being transparent on some of the things that the next level doesn't need to know.
Right. And that's always a hard one in different organizations, depending on what how things were before I joined the organization, to make that adjustment of, this is something you should know. This is something you don't need to really know. Just like you said, it's sometimes comes off as a something that we need to work through and just talk about, like, we're not keeping anything from you. It's just, it doesn't affect your actual workflow.
It's not secrets. We're not hiding something from you. It's just that's something that's going on in a different department or something, and there's no reason to confuse you with that type of information. I can understand that. So a lot of times when I'm working with people and teaching them how to create a process or how to train someone, I tell them it's these 4 steps. And the first step is, I will do it, and I want you to just be quiet, and just sit and watch me. Second, as I feel like you're gaining some speed and you understand it, I want you to help me. So I'll still do it, but I want you to help me, assist me, and we're going to set up something for me to say, all right, hey, Gina, why don't you take this next part, right? So we work like that. Then at that point where we feel like you're really well-versed in it, we switch roles, and I go, you run it now, and I'll help you, and you do the same thing. Hey, can you help me? I'm kind of lost at this point. And then hopefully we get to a point where I'm just sitting back watching, and you're running it, and then eventually, then we both feel comfortable for me to go, I don't ever have to come into that meeting again, right? So I like how you're agreeing with me, so that's good. So that means either you agree with me or you weren't paying attention. Okay.
I agree.
There you are. How do you feel about, or how do you think they feel sometimes when the new manager, let's say, is talking and he's speaking and he knows you're sitting there, whether you're just sitting there quiet or you're waiting to help, and there's a nervousness to that person, because aside from sharing the information and showing and trying to say, I know what needs to be, I have to be transparent, I know I have to do this, I want to say the right things. How do you help them get over that nervousness that you're just hovering, basically?
So I try to talk about that ahead of time. right?
Okay.
And just say again, I'm only going to jump in if, like, we try to come up with a code word, right? Actually, it's literally like, hey, like, what do you want to say? Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, let's come up with something that you can say that I'll know that because you're doing that, I'll jump in and help. Right. I also look at body language, and I talk about that too. I'm going to watch your body language. And if I see something like, I'll jump in. I won't let you just fall off the deep end or whatever it is. So I talk about that. And then in some scenarios, if we know, like there was a couple weeks ago, we had like 3 or 4 training sessions for something. And after each training session, there was a little bit of a debrief. And in one of them, I'm like, the topic. Why are you doubting yourself? Like, you absolutely know the topic. Let's try standing up. Like, I'll run the PowerPoint, and you stand in the front of the room, bring in some samples that you can talk about the thing while you're doing it. So, I try to just do that with people. I'm just like, okay, let's be comfortable, and then give feedback after.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, the thing is with communication is what I feel is one of my expertise, or one of my services I offer, is this communication training. And it still always surprises me that how many people are afraid of just any type of public speaking. And so it's one thing, one-on-one is okay. All right. This in itself is different. I'm being recorded. So it looks like one-on-one, but I don't know who else is watching, that type of thing. Right. Then I'm talking, and there's 3 or 4 people, and the crowd starts getting bigger. And then there's 10 people and 50 people. That's different. But it's a whole different feeling when I'm talking and I have somebody evaluating me. Someone's sitting back there going, I'm fine. I'm not going to say anything. You just go ahead. And it's like, oh, I know I'm making a mistake. Right. And so this idea of helping them get past that, and I think working on that on a regular basis, especially with your leadership team, right? We need them to be great communicators. Okay. So, I'm a big advocate for the club Toastmasters. And I always push plenty of people on it. It's actually going to be very funny. They have here in Chicagoland, where I'm from, they have a convention coming up, and I've been asked to give a presentation at Toastmasters on how to evaluate.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm kind of excited, but mixed excited, because I'm one of those people who are like, oh my God, stop being so nervous. Just give the speech.
Right.
That's
right.
Evaluation, right? So I'm going to work on that. All right. So we've talked a little bit about being transparent, and I think that's being honest. And I think that it's not just about what we're sharing, but it's being honest and giving honest feedback on the way that our leaders are speaking. It's speaking back and forth. I think it's being transparent with our employees in the way that you're picking up the information. It doesn't sound like you're paying attention. I don't see you taking notes. What are we doing? How are you going to implement this? I think when I'm saying be transparent, I'm saying be honest and open with everyone on everything we see. So that's why I'm so glad you mentioned body language. It's so important, especially when you say, I'm going to give you some information that I need you to pass on to somebody else. And you can't be doing that. You can't be rolling your eyes. Right. That kind of stuff. So I think the feedback is very important there. So let's jump into the letter A. That was B in the bacon. So the letter A is ask questions. Okay. And that idea of, you've heard the adage, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I should be listening twice as much. And Gina, you know me long enough to know that I'd rather be talking than listening.
No, you don't say.
I'm a pretty darn good listener. But, I do like to talk. I like the sound of my voice. Okay. So as far as asking questions, how do you, let's just put this in communication with your team, obviously, whether it's your leadership team or the, let's just call them the workers, that level. How do you encourage them to ask questions? How do you get into that? And how do you remind yourself to keep asking questions?
Well, I always ask questions, so that is not anything.
I will attest that is something you're very good at.
I am very good at asking questions. So I encourage the team not to make assumptions, and there is no harm in just asking questions and asking to confirm whatever assumption you have. So I try to, depending on the situation, um, follow up with my own questions to them about
Okay.
something. And then if they don't know, then I use that again kind of as a impromptu feedback / coaching of, in scenarios like this, we want to make sure to ask, a series of questions. So depending on, like today I was with engineering, walking the floor on an issue. And we went through something that people said, oh, yep, we've done this before, we do it all the time, something along those lines. So when we were up there, I was with them and I asked the operator, when was the last time we did this? And they were like, oh, I'm not really sure, we've never actually done this.
Wow.
So, when we came back, we're going down the stairs and I do that whole thing of, what did we learn with that interaction today?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, what did we learn? We learned that we should ask when people say that they've done it before or they've always done it, when's the last time that they've done it?
Right.
Because sometimes they're talking about 15 years ago, or they heard that someone did it. So
at one time,
yeah.
When this war, it was yeah.
So it's a matter of just again with that whole idea of like that debrief model of just like, okay, well, did we ask about the demand cycle? Did we ask about the supplier issues? No? Well, we should probably do that in this type of setting. So it's kind of creating little checklists with people. Yeah.
I like it. So when I'm teaching people about the asking questions, there's a couple different things that I like adding into it. And you can take a look at it, ponder this, use it, or saying it might not apply directly. But one of the things is I encourage people when they're asking questions is to do the follow-up questions by repeating some of the answer. Okay, it's really important. So let's say that you ask them, when was the last time this was done? And they go, well, it hasn't been done while I've been working here, but I heard it was done. So then what you do is you ask a follow-up question. All right, so you're saying it has never happened while you were here. Okay, so about when do you think it happened? By repeating it, it also kind of guarantees, not 100%, but guarantees that you're answering or you're understanding their answer. It makes them hear what you said and say, yeah, you did hear what I said because you repeated it back to me. And it's actually kind of funny, a little scary sometimes when you repeat it back and then the person goes, no, that's not really what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're like, well, just tell me the truth. You don't have to sugarcoat it. Just tell me the answer, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the one thing. And I find that pulls out some real great truths sometimes. And it makes the person feel heard so that the communication can continue. Now, in sales, one of the things I'm going to do is follow up with the questions, but it works not just in sales, just in general, is follow up with the whys. Okay. Like, in other words, hey, this hasn't happened while I've been working here. Why do you think that hasn't happened? You're not accusatory.
Right.
Why haven't you done it? Not like that. But you could say, what makes you, or what do you think is the reason we've never done it? That type of thing, to get their opinion so we understand a little bit more, because then all of a sudden they go, yeah, because according to the maintenance schedule, it's got to be done once every 8 years. And I've only been here 6 years. Okay. Which is a deeper answer than it's never happened while I was here. Right. Suddenly something that sounds scary is, oh, well, then that makes sense. Okay, so I find this idea of not being afraid to say why or what does that mean, that type of thing, more than once. Dig into it deeper. And so why do you think that is? Even it's this idea of, so it's done, the maintenance is done every 8 years. Why do you think it's every 8 years? Suddenly it turns into a conversation as opposed to a question, an interview, question and answer. Okay. And I think we dig into this a little bit more. And again, the person on both people, both sides end up feeling like they have an important role in the conversation. Okay. So I am sure that you do this without even realizing you're doing it, because you are a great listener and you're very good with follow-up questions.
Yeah, no, I have 21 follow-up questions to every activity. So
I think, you know what, I got to give you a little kudos. You have a gift that a lot of people don't have. And that is that you have no problem saying, I don't understand this.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how to do this. So I'm coming to you so you can explain it to me.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And you're really good at that. I just want to let you know that I see this in you and you're really good at this. And so many other people are so afraid to say, I don't know how to do that. Right. Because they're feeling they're going to be judged by that.
Uh-huh.
And then what ends up happening is you're like, all right, so then you know it, so you're in charge of that. And then the guy goes like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have
Yeah.
said this. Right?
Yeah.
So I think the way that you do it is also it takes down that defense. Well,
Mhm.
if you can admit you don't know how to do it, then I certainly should be able to.
Right.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. So with this, and this leads us right into this letter C here, and that is creating safety.
Uh-huh.
All right. When we're communicating, oh, nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. Okay. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say no one because there are a few people who love to
Who
be the
love
bearer.
to be the bad news. Yeah.
Right. They're like, I got bad news.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're not talking about that. But we're talking about something happened and I need to alert you, or something happened. I tried to fix it. It didn't fix. I tried to bury it. It didn't get buried. It's coming alive again. And now all of a sudden it's a monstrous problem when you're like, why didn't you come to me when it was this problem? Right. And it's this whole thing of people looking at themselves and going, I'm making one mistake on top of another, on top of another. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So how do you create this psychological safety with your team so that they feel like, it's okay. I'm human. I make mistakes. Gina understands. This is the magic question because everyone who's listening wants to know this answer.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like there's nothing that I can say to not have some element of like fear. Because there is something, and I say it every now and then where I say, I understand what my title is in your organization, but I'm not coming from that place. Like, I just want to understand, what's going on. So it's tough overcoming that. Right. And I think what I end up doing is just continuing to encourage people,
Okay.
and letting them know that there's no need for that. Right. I had something that happened yesterday where I had an individual just send me this really long apology text, and it was after hours. I called them and I said, you absolutely don't need to apologize to that level. Like, it's okay. Like, nothing happened. Like, yeah. So, I try to do it with the follow up. I try to do it, again, I try to do that like individualness, where I go back to someone and I said, hey, like, why were you so worried about that? Like, don't beat yourself up so much, over that. And, I get the whole, I just want to do a really good job. And I feel like I let you down, and I feel like I'm not taking the company to the level that you want us to work at. And I'm like, we're all learning. Like, there's no
answers. Those are all great answers.
Right. Yeah. There's absolutely no need for that, and I try to just, the way that I act is I jump in and, I have no problem. I'm willing to do anything, but I just try to give the feedback to people of like, please, like, don't put more pressure on yourself than I am, because what ends up happening is that it's just, I'm going to get disappointed in that, and it's not going to have anything to do with the job that you're doing. And we don't want to be in that space.
No, not at all. Yeah. Not at all. So it's interesting because I've gone and I've worked for plenty of people that have put me in that position where I was afraid to go to them. And then I've worked with plenty of people who are just open up and just say, just tell me, just open it up. Let's solve the problem together. And you're right. It is difficult because if you really respect somebody, it's even harder to go to them and say, I made a mistake, right? And I think with this psychological safety, you've really got to drive home that we almost push for mistakes. Okay. I mean, I don't want to say it just like that, but we want you to be innovative. We want you to try new things. We want you to grow. We want you to help us improve processes. And in part of improving, mistakes are going to happen. Right. And what's really important is, how are we going to face those mistakes? What are we going to do? And you've got to be able to come back to us all the time. Right. When I talk about, or when I teach people about talking about goals, it's one thing to say, this is the company's goals, right? This is where the company wants to go. With a company, we want to be a $30 million company. We want to be a $50 million company. We want to be a $1 million company, whatever it is. And I found that a lot of employees go, wow, that's great. But like, what's in it for me? So I help you build this massive company. What's in it for me, right? So I think it's important, again, and this helps, it shows some vulnerability that then I think opens the doors and creates that safety for communication. So I ask an employee, I want to talk to you a little bit about your personal goals, where you want to go, where you see yourself in 5 years. Okay. And my purpose is, if I can help you hit your goals, maybe together we can hit the company goals. So I'm going to start by sharing with you my goals. And as a manager, I'm going to open up and say, this is what I would like to do. I would like to get to the point that I have a team that is running so smoothly, I know I could take a 2-week vacation, like at the drop of a hat. I could say, in a month, I want to take a 2-week vacation. I don't want to have to say, I can't leave this place. That's one of my goals. All right. Some of my other goals, I want to write another book. I want to do this, whatever, all those kind of things. But open up and say, these are the things I want. Now you tell me some of your goals, and they might say all kinds of, yeah, I'd love to go on vacation. Man, I want to go on a long weekend thing. I'd like to buy a boat someday. Okay. Let's see what I can do to help you with your goals. You help me with my goals, and together, let's reach the company goals. And I just feel it's sometimes so easy, or it's much easier for somebody to open up after they hear me, their manager, their supervisor, their director, their president, open up and become a little more vulnerable. Okay. And I'm hoping it works, because I have also heard you say, listen, guys, I just made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
Be open about it. And everyone goes, okay. And then you look around and go, and they're still not going to admit they made a mistake.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a work in process. I think, but that's a great avenue. That's a road, is continue to remind them that you're human and you're making a mistake and you're still here. And if they make a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
We talk about the end of the world. We'll talk about the end of the world if you make the same mistake 3, 4, 5 times.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to say that. I think it becomes different when the mistake is repeating itself.
Yes.
And I think that territory is different than, okay, this is the first time ever. And I try to, again, use those opportunities to say, this is the first time we've ever actually had a scenario where, XYZ ABC happened. So we learned something today.
How about it? And you think about it, that's fantastic. As long as you didn't burn the building down, that's great, right? Because we learned something from it, and we learned, don't do that again. Or we could do the ABC, but don't do DEF. Anything. So that we've got to grow like that. But yeah, let's make it clear for anyone who's listening. If the person continues to make the same mistake over and over again, then you've got to ask yourself, was this person trained right? Does this person have too much authority? Does this person, is the person not paying attention, or am I not explaining it well enough? What the deal is? There's something more to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, unfortunately, that has to end with one or both people leaving. Something like that. Yeah.
And I like the topic about the training, because I think sometimes we take tribal knowledge for granted, or we make assumptions. So, a lot of the times when things happen, there is again, that's one of those, hey, what's the training for this? Did this person actually get trained? Is it the first time that they were doing this task? Because depending on what the responses are, there's a different follow-up associated with that.
Right. So with that, and I liked what you just called it, and I like the direction you're going in. I want you to think about this. Is there something that you can recall? I don't care how far back you want to go or whatever. Something that you recall that you were kind of surprised that other people just didn't know that. Like I always talk about people who have a difficult time public speaking. I mean, I understand it and I empathize with them, but every once in a while when I see that, I'm surprised. Like, oh my God, you're really that nervous, right? And it's also that when I see people draw, and just drawing something simple, I can draw. I love watching great artists and painting or drawing or whatever, but simple things that I can draw. And then I watch someone else and I'm like, are you using your correct hand? Like, you know, but I'm not laughing at them. I'm
Mhm.
kind of like more amazed by it.
Uh-huh.
And then it has to come to fruition. And in my head, I go, wow, this is a talent or an ability that I have or a piece of knowledge I have that not everyone has. So has there ever been anything that you can think of that you were just a little surprised that you kind of considered it common sense maybe or a talent everyone has and you just noticed not everyone has it?
That's a tough one for me because I think my um standard mode is always to go like seek to understand first. So
Okay.
I'm like assessing to see if those things are known or not. So I
I like that.
yeah, I
I
kind of
wish I was more like that.
yeah,
I'm more like gung ho. Let's go here. Now you just do this. You do this. I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this. Oh, what do you mean you don't know how to do that? Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. That's what makes you a great leader.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So that's why I just wanted to kind of get an idea because sometimes when we were talking about this, when we're talking with somebody and we're asking them to do something and we're communicating with them, when we say, this is what I need you to get done. And then you walk away and that person sits there going, oh my God, she made it sound, it's so easy. Marty said it. He made it sound like I should just be able to do this.
Mhm.
And I don't know how to do this. And I'm afraid to admit it.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, I think I build in asking people
Okay.
that, like, do you know how to? And maybe I don't do that as much as I should,
Okay.
and maybe fall into the trap of assumptions
Sure.
that
Well,
I was clear. So that does tend to happen. Like as
right.
the more we're talking, I'm like, oh wait, there are a couple instances where I'm like, oh, I assumed that this was easy, and
Yeah.
that was not a good assumption.
Right, right. And I think it's also tough because I don't want to go, all right, I want you to do this, this, and this. Okay, now repeat it back to me. What are
Right.
you going to do? Because once or twice works, but
Mhm.
if that's how I'm going to communicate with you all the time,
Yeah.
eventually the person, forget about safety, the person feels not trusted,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you lose that connection that you
Right.
could have,
Yeah.
right?
And the trust. Sorry to interrupt, but that trust topic is so like I don't want to say sensitive, but it's so important.
Yes.
And especially when kind of in my scenario where we're probably implementing new processes and or making a shift to the way things were done previously, that there's this element of what, don't you trust me? Like, don't you trust?
Right.
I've been here for X amount of years. Don't you trust me?
Yeah.
Depending on the topic, I'll build that into the conversation where I'm like, this is an aspect of trust. It's an aspect of understanding,
Perfect.
so that I in turn can get a better idea of like the challenges that you're facing every day so that we can figure out, okay, what bigger enterprise wide change do we need to make so that you don't have to deal with that scenario.
I like it. I like it a lot. All right. This is actually going very well. I like this. I'm watching the time. I think we're running on time just perfectly.
Perfect.
Okay. So in this, we've covered this idea of be transparent, ask questions, create safety, which is really important. So this other one is open feedback. All right. And this is the idea that true communication is not one way. All
Mhm.
right. And this really builds on everything we're talking about. This talks about uh, this idea of, asking the right questions, giving them the freedom or the courage to come back.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, before I get some feedback from you, it was interesting. I was just with a group and we talked about this, and I was talking about the psychological safety of how often does this group get together. And there was I'd say about 10 people in this table, and they're all talking, all little department leads. And I said, how often do you guys talk and you end up agreeing on everything? And they're like, oh, pretty much all the time we agree on stuff. I'm like, okay, now I want you to be honest. How often have you sat there and you didn't necessarily agree, but the entire team leaned one way and you thought, I don't want to stand out and be the only one to disagree, and maybe maybe I don't understand it, or maybe my feeling isn't strong enough, so I didn't say anything. So by a raise of hands, how many people have been in that position? Every single person raised their hand. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting, because isn't it, and I'm saying it's not sad, it's not terrible, but everyone is admitting now the same thing, that you have been put in a position where you felt like you couldn't give feedback. So this is one of the things I want you to try. And I said, you come up with the naysayer, the designated naysayer. So no matter what it is, and this happened to be at this elder care place. And I said, so let's say you have a meeting and somebody says, from now on, we're going to be serving green Jello on Fridays, just to make up something. And everyone goes, sounds like a good idea. What you have to have is one person is the designated naysayer. And no matter how they feel, they have to say, no, that's a bad idea. And they have to push for why Jello is bad, why green is bad, why Fridays are bad, whatever it is, and just keep pushing the negativity. Because even though they know, maybe they're like, yeah, that's a good idea, or it's not that big of a deal. Why am I fighting it, right? But by doing that, what happens is it frees up somebody else who might go, you know what? I don't really think green Jello is the right idea, because somebody's already saying it, and they're saying it adamantly. Okay. And it allows people to step up and have that fear to give open feedback. Right. Now, it's also protecting that person, because we know they're the designated naysayer. Right. And so at the end, you could say, what was your real feelings? And they'd be like, I never really cared. Right. Or whatever. Right. But what it does is then you randomly pick and you say, tonight, you're going to be the naysayer. Tomorrow, Marty, you're going to be the naysayer when we do this. And I think there's a lot of power to this. And at the same group, I asked them, if we were in the group and I pointed to one person and Nancy, if Nancy was knocking it, right? And I said, let's do the green Jello thing. And I said, Nancy kept knocking it. And if you felt you didn't want the green Jello, would that help you raise your hand and say, I'm against green Jello? And again, everyone was like, yeah, that actually would be so much nicer to have. So I think it's something to think about, and I'd like to see it put in practice more. I've seen it, I've heard about it, but I've never really seen it in practice. Only one time I got a different group to actually do it. And they were kind of having a difficult time, because they're like, the person who was the naysayer was like, I really agree with this, but you're making me disagree. I'm like, you're not supposed to say that, right? Yeah. So I'd like to see it put in practice, because I think there's something there. This idea might need to be tweaked or something.
I mean, I agree with that. A lot of the times I think I bring some of that naysayerness to a lot of discussions. I mean, I think part of the discussions we have from time to time, I'm like on the opposite side, to encourage the discussion in a group. Or depending on the topic, I think it's, and because I go into so many meetings, so many different groups over the years, I've done a lot of prep in a meeting of talking to certain individuals and saying, I know this is a tough topic, so I want you to say this instead of me, right? To spark something in the team. So I try to build in some of that naysayerness into the group, but I like the idea of designating someone to be the naysayer, to see if that helps break up some of the unintentional silence, where nobody wants to say anything because no one else has said anything, to your point, right? No one else has said anything, so I don't want to be the one. And I have no problem with being the one. So...
I kind of think it would almost be a little too fun for me to be the naysayer.
Yeah, no, it would be.
Right? But I think there's some power to it, because I think then the other thing that's cool about it is, as the designated naysayer, I have to think of clever reasons why it's a bad idea. And I might actually stumble on something that no one thought about. Right. And all of a sudden I say something and everyone's going, Oh, I never thought of that. Oh my God, you're right. I changed my mind. I don't want green Jello on Fridays.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's something really, really strong there, and I think it's important with that open feedback, right?
Yeah.
Now we kind of talked on this. Is there anything else that you can think about? Let's say you're having a one-on-one with your team, or just one person, a one-on-one with one person, obviously, and you try to encourage them. Give me open feedback. Are you disagreeing with me? Do you think I'm doing a good job? Do you think I'm doing a bad job? How do you push them into that whole idea? Because they're like going, I don't care if we're alone. I don't care if I'm in a group. You're the president, and I can only go so far on this. You know, is there again, I know you're going to repeat some of the things you said, but if that's it, that's it. So
Yeah.
again,
I think sometimes depending on the person, I try to remind, like, I don't want you just to say yes, right? Please don't just say yes because of
right,
my role or what you think I want you to say.
right,
I try to ask open-ended questions. Like one
okay,
thing I did a couple weeks ago is like, is this helpful? Like, just let me know if it's not helpful, right? I'm
good,
trying to help, go through these series of steps. Do you still agree with them? Do you think there's something that we should change from it? So I try to ask open-ended questions to get that feedback.
okay,
So that's the way that I try to do it. Sometimes nothing comes out. So and I go back to it, but then I try to in the event that happens, and I get no feedback and then something happens, I try to like take that interaction and say, okay, you didn't express you didn't agree, but then here we are, you're not following what we agreed to. So help me
yeah,
understand,
yeah,
you know.
right, yeah. Like, was that a wasted conversation?
Mhm.
I asked you for your feedback, and then you said no, everything's good, and you did it your way anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then you got to have that then you got to come up with the follow-up conversation. It's not fair to either one of us if you're just going to agree with me and do it your own way
Mhm.
anyway, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think one thing that I do want to share that happens, and I've recently, maybe not a good thing or uh, I don't know, but I've started to kind of use the term like frustration, right? Like I'm frustrated because we agreed that these were the steps
yeah,
and that's not what's happening. I'm very frustrated because, we're not completing certain things. I just need help understanding why we can't finish it, right? But I always keep that aspect, or I try to keep that aspect open in my mind. Going back
right,
to what we talked about earlier about the training, is the frustration or the lack of completion tying to um, a lack of understanding of how to do something? Was it still not clear?
right,
I think one of the things, and it's not necessarily the topic of discussion here, but it's been a topic we've talked a lot about, is the deadlines, right? Is some of this coming from a lack of clarity on deadline, right? Because if
right,
there's a deadline, we need to make sure to openly communicate the deadline, not just
yeah,
have the deadline internally, right?
right,
And
right.
that's something that I would say every organization needs to work on all the time, is that clarity of the sequencing of what actually needs to happen now and what needs to happen over the course of a period of time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I always go back to this idea. I explain to people about the deadline thing. Is my wife and I will be sitting at the kitchen table, something, and she looks up at the chandelier and she goes, "The light bulb is out. Can you change the light bulb?" My answer is yes, of course I can, no problem, right? And then 2 days later, we're sitting there. She goes, "You know what? I'll just change the damn light bulb." I told you I was going to do it,
Right.
right? And in my mind, I'm going to do it. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to the garage for anything.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't seem like it's urgent, right? And
Uh-huh.
so when I go to the garage, I'll grab a light bulb and I'll swap it out. No big deal. But in her mind, she's already set a deadline. She listed it as very urgent, and I listed it as not urgent at all.
Uh-huh.
And I think so, like you said, I love how you brought up a deadline. Is in most communication like that, we've got to be able to communicate what success looks like, what failure looks like, what the deadline is. Okay. And it would have been something like, hey, can you change the light bulb? Yes, I will. And if she had said, when are you going to change the light bulb? Or can you change the light bulb now? It's a whole different conversation. And what we did was we let emotion get involved in it because of a lack of communication, a lack of full communication. We knew what the job was. We didn't know the level of urgency, and we didn't know a deadline. And so that is incomplete communication. And it seems silly about something as simple as change a light bulb, right? But if it can affect something that simple, it's, can you put together the sales presentation? Hey, can you go and pitch this product to this guy? Yeah, I will. All right. So imagine that. Oh, I was going to do it next month. Okay. Yeah. No, we need to do it today. Right. So we have to really drive home urgency, and we've got to drive home a deadline. And one more thing, and it's, again, I'm going to go back to this, depending on the level where you are in the line. If you're on the front line doing the work, let's say, if you're at the line where you're supervising, managing, directing, etc., all up there, there's also got to be more control on our emotions. Okay, the higher up you have to be, I can't get mad at you. I can't get upset with you, because I have to sit back and say, instead of being so emotional, I have to be more logical. Why is this happening? Not, why is this happening?
Right. Right.
And when you sit here, sometimes I still see plenty of management act in the wrong way. They say, well, I asked you to do this. Why? I don't understand why it's not getting done. And they're frustrated. They walk away, and the person goes, they never really asked me to do that. They said, do I think that's a good idea? Right. And in their mind, do you think it's a good idea means, could you please do it right now? Right. Okay. And so when you're going up the level, and it should be anyone, we have to pull emotion out of that. Right. And is there any way that that you either harness yourself, because we're all human, we all have emotions, or how you mentor people to understand that better about when you're talking about processes, jobs, getting things done? This is a logical thing that we're talking about. It's not an emotional thing.
Yeah.
How do you?
Sometimes with the emotion,
like questions to people, and you had no idea what was coming.
So, sometimes with the emotional piece, I'll go back to, well, what's the process, and are all parties that are involved, do they understand what the process is, and do they realize what role they played in the process, right? And I think that, the clarity of exactly who needs to do what when you're talking in a group, right? And I think we talked about it earlier, like, what assumptions are you making? Like the common sense, like, oh, if we talked about this, like, duh, that means that you're the one that's supposed to do it. And we take in the moment for granted that everybody just knows what they need to do, but maybe don't validate if everybody understood what they needed to do. So one of the things that I tried doing this year was taking that project management approach, right? Of, okay, we have so many initiatives that do need to happen, and you can chip away at some quicker than others. Some may not be as urgent, right? So do we as an organization have a really clear understanding of these big projects that we have to do, and then how are we in turn breaking those projects down, and making sure that different individuals in the organization understand what they're responsible for, and then what they need to do, and tying it to deadlines. So that's kind of the space that we're in, of if there's a moment in time where I'm dealing with a manager, or I'm the manager that's emotional, right? I'm finding someone to talk to about it, kind of behind the scenes as much as possible. I'll have my moments, without a doubt, just like anybody. Where, I try to talk out with the person, or, with myself, of what is it that we're upset about, and where were we potentially unclear, and where were we clear? And a lot of times it goes back to, it wasn't really clear. what we needed to do or the sequence that needed to take place, or there wasn't a deadline. Right. And like that has definitely been a recurring theme. And before you know it, 3 months go by. Right. Yeah. So now, it's crazy because you're trying to make up, you can't really make up for 3 months of time passing. So
I mean, a recurring thing, because it does happen everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, anyone who's listening to this and saying it out loud, we all do this. We say, get this done, but we don't talk about urgency. We don't talk about deadline.
Yeah. And one of another like aha moments that we've had is sometimes when someone shifts to work on something, we don't remember to ask, what aren't you doing because now you're doing this?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So then sometimes the frustration comes from that, myself included, especially where, okay, I potentially distracted you to work on something else, but I'm still expecting that other project to be done, or that other initiative to take place. So both with the management team trying to think past like, hey, if now all the resources are working on this, it's probably not a good assumption that the other thing that needed to also happen is going to happen on time anymore. So how can we build into our day-to-day of asking that question? Like, what aren't you doing because I'm asking you to do this now? Or how does this shift in priorities affect something, right? And how do we take that moment to think about the individual that we're going to, let's say in a manufacturing setting, right? If we're asking someone to prioritize a certain order, and they do that, and then it creates this unbalancedness. A different way we can approach it is say, hey, these 5 customers need this as quickly as possible. What order do you like? What do you need to do in manufacturing? So we hit that versus, okay, this person definitely wants to go first. Like, little do you know, maybe there's a 4-hour changeover in there, and 4 other customers could have just gotten done quickly. And then, everybody could have still been happy, right? So maybe it's thinking about how you phrase what you're asking someone and saying, like, this is important, and so is this. Like, what order do you think you should do it?
Right. Well, actually, it's interesting. I'm just working with another person that 2 people, they don't have enough time to communicate. One person is the owner, and then there's an operations manager. Mm-hmm. And so what I said was, since you can only, you give feedback, you're sending in reports and that, but what we need is a 5-minute stand-up meeting, a typical Gina 5-minute stand-up meeting, right? And I said, we're going to get a bulletin board on the wall here, a regular cork board, and we're going to do it across here. And we're going to do it's called the Eisenhower matrix, or the 4Ds. So this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to delay. This is what you're going to delegate. And this is what you're going to dump. Mm-hmm. And what I told her was, take the stuff in Post-it notes or whatever. These are the things I'm working on. And write them out and stick them in the areas, right? And stick them in the 4 areas. And then once a week, when the owner comes in and they have this quick 5-minute meeting, they're going to stand in front of the wall and say, why is this in dump? This is something we need to do. This is important. Put it over here. And the owner is going to help rearrange, in other words, prioritize. And then the owner comes in and says, I need you to do this and this and this. She writes it down and says, where should I put it on the board? Right? Because if suddenly it's like, oh my God, you have 7 things undue. All right, we want you to do this. So then let's take this other thing and move it over to delay. Mm-hmm. And it's it doesn't work for everyone, but it's a perfect visual piece that works very well, or I'm hoping will work very well for these 2. Because it gives them a very short period of time to just look at it. And so both of them understand the amount of work that's getting done, and it helps them prioritize. The stuff, these are the important things, these are the urgent things, etc. And then they're both on the same wavelength, right? Same page. And I think it's really important. We've talked a little bit about time management in the past, right? And,
yes.
And so this was perfect. I'm glad I was able to study it a lot and dig into it. What works for me and what works for other people, what doesn't work for me, but works wonderfully for other people, right? And so it's really important to work with people and try to find out what's best for them. Okay? And so I'll keep my fingers crossed, and we'll see in the future episodes, part 4, part 5, part 6 of this. If that's working, I want to make mention of that.
Yeah, no, and I would like to share something that we're using similar, kind of similar to the Post-it board, but we're using the Monday.com platform to do project tracking. So that gives us the ability across, again, the enterprise of seeing all the different initiatives that we have, and we can assign tasks. And again, like I mentioned, the deadlines is important, but it gives everybody a chance to be able to see everything that we're working on. And how some tasks take longer for certain functions, right? Like and this is probably a bad example, it's easy to enter a sales order into an ERP system. It is harder to analyze a drawing to understand tolerances, right? So, it's sometimes what you're asking people to do, you need to be mindful of like what that takes for time. So you don't overcommit, because I think it's very easy for everyone to say, yes, like I'll do that and I'll do that and I'll do that.
Well, that's the thing. And I like this idea of when people are excited, like, yeah, I can do that. I'll do that. I view that as that's dessert.
Yeah.
And you got to ask them, did you eat your vegetables first?
Yeah. Yep.
That's the big thing, right? Because everyone gets excited about the new thing.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like, I don't want to give you something that I'm feeling is important, but it's a distraction, or it gives you the ability to procrastinate on something that might be more important.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm looking at this. Believe it or not, Gina, it's already an hour. All right. Can you believe that?
No, okay. I can't.
Excellent. And so the only thing that was left, what we kind of covered, that was the letter N, was notify always. And this was this constant feedback going on, like you're saying, double checking with them, asking them what's going on. Where are you with this project? And helping them reorganize, reprioritize what's going on. I think that's so important, because like we just got finished saying, when I have an employee who's so excited about wanting to please me and wanting to get everything done, and I come to that employee and say, can you help with this? It is in their heart, in their soul, that they're like, yes, I am willing to drop everything to help you, because you came to me. Let me do that. And then you come back later. How come you didn't do those other things? Well, because no, I didn't tell you not to do those things, right? And it's terrible, because here's the employee who would run through fire for you, and now they're getting they're getting scolded, let's say, because they didn't do those other things, right?
Yeah.
So this is where true communication comes in. And I like, because you made it so perfectly clear. Don't just tell me about the things we're doing, but tell me all about the things that we're not doing, because we're doing these things.
Yeah. And that's a tough one. It's a tough one to remember to talk about. And, it's that whole aspect of the prioritizing or being clear. One thought I want to share before I forget is that continuation of going back, and audit's usually the word I use, because you're going back, and if you say something or you communicate something, you have to go back and check on it at some cadence all the time, right? And this whole idea of continuous improvement, and we implemented this, did it work? Did it not work? Why aren't we following it? Because sometimes I've found something gets misunderstood, right? And and it's like, that is not what I meant by what I said, right? So it's very important that you go back as a leader of a team, or as a lead in a group, whatever it is, that you check in on whatever process was discussed, and it feels like you're over communicating, right? It feels like you're doing overkill. But the better you can get into the habit of it early, the longer, you can make sure it's like kind of autopilot, right? So if we have a meeting to kick something off, what are the follow-up notes to clarify, and then checking in with people individually, right? And not trying to do it as a group, because then what happens is everybody's like, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'm having no problem, right? Until you go to their workstation and say, hey, can you show me how to enter a new customer in Monday? And, they don't want to admit to it in the group, maybe,
Right.
or they don't do it as often, so they get overwhelmed, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
that happens too. So it's very important to try to do those things on a more individual basis,
Okay.
and more informed. That's like that informal. Hey, I'm going to check on this. Walk me through this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
I like.
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, and that's, I've told my team, I'm like, that's never going to stop. So at any point in time, if I'm coming and I'm asking questions, I'm like, it's part of my trust factor, right? It's like this like trust system that I've developed over the years where I'll do spot audits, right,
Uh-huh.
to see how things are going, and depending on the results, if it's something super crazy, it might turn into a more serious conversation. But if it's something that's not too bad, it's an opportunity to say, hey, let's not forget that we're supposed to do this, and my audit frequency may increase a little bit,
Okay.
just to make sure, and then it'll scale back accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So I just by based on what you're saying, there was two different things that popped in my head, and I wanted to see what your thoughts on this was. So I like this idea that if we come up with something that's going to take some time, and let's say it's a month, so this has to get done in the next 30 days. We've got to build into it not just the deadline of the 30 days, but we're also going to put in another day, a checkup day,
right.
see how we're progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's an old adage, if you give me 30 days to do it, it's going to take me 30 days to do
right.
it. You give me 1 hour to do it, it's going to take me 1 hour to do it, right? Yeah. So I think when we do this, and it's a longer term project, we're giving people a longer time frame because we want it done with higher quality. We want it done right. So I think it's important to find check-in times throughout,
right,
and say we're going to check in a week, we're going to check in 2 weeks, etc., to get it done, just so people feel the heat a little bit to get some of it done by the time that check-in comes.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I was going to ask you was when that comes up, like you had said, how people feel nervous because I'm about to demo something in front of the group.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever thought about, and do you think there's any benefit to this, or do you think there'd be a negative to this, of saying, hey, I'm going to come into your office at 1, and I want you to demo this then. So it kind of gives them breathing room, like they're prepared, so they can go through it in their head. They can grab their notes and go, yeah, this is how they do it. God forbid, we don't want them to go, good, I got an hour to actually learn it because I told you I've known it for a month, right?
Right.
But giving them a little bit of a break, breathing room, and saying, hey, we're going to go that instead of jumping in and say, show me now.
Uh-huh.
Do you think there's any benefits, negatives to that? What do you think?
I definitely think there are benefits to that. Yeah. I think it helps with that psychological safety, right?
Sure.
Where it's not putting someone on the spot. I think anything where we give people a heads up that we're going to do something is great, right? And again, I think it depends on the potential severity of the situation, right? Like, and what it is, right? If you want to do an audit to make sure everybody's using the PPE they're supposed to use, like you won't announce it, right? It's like you kind of go and it's like, you're not using the PPE. Like you have to be, we want you to be safe, go home the same way that you came to work. So, there's that. I think one of the techniques I've done lately is, even though we're all in person in the office, I force the team to use Teams, right? So that as the world evolves and as we connect more with customers or vendors, we're likely going to use some virtual platform, right? So internally, we're trying to use that space to be comfortable with it so that when you need to do it for real, you're ready for it. So that's something that we've done. And in some scenarios, just depending if it's not that serious, like I do like to put people on the spot. Just again, we'll have a Teams meeting and we'll go through something, and it's like, all right, everybody in the group, and I warn them ahead of time, everybody in the group, this is going to be a working session, and we're actually going to follow you do it as well. So that way you practice all the clicking yourself.
Gotcha,
right?
Gotcha.
So that everybody kind of feels that heat a little bit, for lack of a better word, of clicking through the system, knowing that the intention at the end is, I want you to feel so comfortable with it that you don't think about the fact that you're sharing your screen and you're going through it, Like, we're going to be here to help you.
Gotcha. All right, Gina, I would love to continue to talk, but I'm looking at this. We have to end it. And especially, I have to do one shameless plug. So hold on.
Okay.
That is, like I said, it's my newest book, just came out. It's Your Time, and it's my book on time management. So it is available on Amazon. If anyone's paying attention, go to Amazon and get it. It's a great book on time management. And Gina, I have a copy set aside to give to you.
Awesome.
All right. So with that, again, Gina Melendez, president of Hudson Lock. You can find her on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions for her. Be careful because she's going to surprise you with some questions too.
Yep.
She's a great listener. Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts? Any 30-second wrap up of what's the most important thing about communication to you?
I think being honest with yourself as a person communicating. You know, are you putting in the time and the effort to understand your team and tailor your message in a way that your team is going to be receptive of it?
Wow. Genius. I'm going to say ditto for my 30. Thank you guys. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for tuning in. If you missed any of this, you're probably watching it at this point on Spotify or someplace else on a podcast. Just rewind and watch it again. This is a great episode, and this is part 3 of a 6-part series. This is on communication. We're going to continue to build up on how to build your dream team. So again, thank you. Thank you, Gina. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.